Greetings, friends, fellow citizens, fellow patriots, and even non-citizens, and welcome to this week's edition of the We the People Convention weekly news and opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and I'm the host of this podcast, and I'm the president of the We the People Convention organization. And this podcast and everything we do, from our wonderful website to our text messages, our emails, our social media posts, the videos we put on Rumble and YouTube and all that, are all paid for through the generous donations of our donors to the We the People Convention. And we thank you. We thank our donors for keeping us going for the past 17 years and fighting the fight to protect and defend your and my individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. We also thank those of you who are joining us, for many, many years. Some of you have been, watching this podcast since it began. And for those of you who are new, we get people who join the podcast every week, and we want to welcome all of you. This is an incredible time in American history, and it's just hard to keep up. And many of you write to me and say, why the reason I watch your podcast is because I can't keep up. I don't have time to watch the nightly news and all that stuff, and I can get the whole week's news kind of summarized. And then they like the fact that we take action, because we are not spectators in the American experiment. We are participants. And as we celebrate the 250th anniversary, our birthday as a nation this year, it's even more important than ever for us to participate. And I'm going to talk specifically about that in this podcast. So it's going to be important to act as well as to know and share this information. So welcome to all of you for being part of this podcast this week. We're glad to have you with us, and we think you'll get a lot out of it. So let's get on with it, because the big issue is obviously the war with Iran. And where we sit this morning on Saturday, May 30th, is that the president apparently has a plan on his desk that has been negotiated with the Iranians, and he's trying to decide whether it's enough or it's not enough. So, there's a 60-day ceasefire deal, on his desk, and this is what's in it. All right. And again, there's lots of speculation about what's in it. You don't really know until it comes out. So, Trump even cautioned this week about, people commenting about a deal that they didn't know nothing about. So here's what we know so far. The United States and Iran have tentatively agreed upon a 60-day more memorandum of understanding to extend their current ceasefire and enable further negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. A U.S. government source has confirmed with the Epoch Times. The deal is waiting a final sign-off by President Donald Trump, the source said, on May 28th. So in a post that came out on X, yesterday, President Trump is in the Situation Room and has laid out his final terms. No negotiations. It's this or consequences. Iran faces a clear message with no way out. Number one, zero nuclear weapons. Not even close. Not now. Not ever. Not negotiable. Total and verifiable destruction of all its nuclear materials and facilities. The Straits of Hormuz opens now. No tolls, no blockades, free and safe navigation in both directions. Immediate withdrawal of all mines in the strait. And number 5, lifting of the U.S. blockade only if the above is met. This is not a proposal. It's a final warning. After years of provocation, threats, and nuclear blackmail, the Iranian regime is cornered. Trump is not playing games. The moves in the Gulf are massive, and the clock is ticking. It must choose surrender or sink. I think that's legitimate. I think that we are to that point, despite, the propaganda that, Iran puts out and that you see on the internet. We know the financial toll has been devastating. And Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, stepped in to substitute for the press secretary, Caroline Levitt, they're kind of having Rubio and Vance and all these guys do this. So he stepped in to the press conference and he talked about the fact that Iran's economy is collapsing and more pain is coming. And this, I think, is the most important thing. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent explained that Operation Economic Fury has led to some big consequences in Iran and more was on the way. The economy was in free fall, he said. Their troops are not getting paid. The police are not reporting to work, and Karg Island is shut down. The Iranian economy and currency are in free fall. Bessent also warned Oman against joining with Iran and trying to impose any kind of fee structure for ships traveling through the Straits of Hormuz. He confirmed that the U.S. would not be supporting or agreeing to any such thing and told them they better not do so either. So, as we've talked on this podcast, it was important that we took military action to destroy their Navy, their Air Force, their defense missiles, their manufacturing. That was important because it crippled them from being a threat. Okay. But then it was really important and smart to kind of pause that and then just brutally cut them off economically. And that's what's working. And that's what's bringing them to the table. And so we don't know, as this podcast is being recorded, what's going to happen. Because if they don't surrender, as it said in that post, I think we're going to hit them again and hit them harder and take out, blow up their railroads and their bridges and some of the other things that are key to their society even functioning. And we'll see if that has to happen. But the bottom line is Trump is winning, and it's going to be a matter of time. And he said, this week, and again, maybe that was a bluff. He said they think, that they can wait me out because of the midterm elections. He goes, I'm not feeling any pressure by the midterm elections. I'm fine with where we're at. So, if that's the case, they don't have any leverage. They don't have any negotiating room. And we certainly have a lot of it. And so, different things have been happening that are important. Iranian president says Tehran not seeking nuclear weapons because, again, this is fundamental. This is, what is Trump's main motivation? They can never have a nuclear weapon or the rocket technology to use it, not just on Israel or, European neighbors, but on us. That's the bottom line. Bottom line, Trump's not going to negotiate that away any way, shape, or form. So the Iranian president, Mossad Pezeshkian, said that Iran wants to show that Iran is not seeking to produce a nuclear weapon, as the Trump administration said over the weekend that a deal with Tehran is coming closer to fruition. Iranian president said in comments carried by Iranian state-run media that Tehran is ready to assure the world we do not seek nuclear weapons and is not seeking unrest in the region. Well, that means funding Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, all that, okay? Key things that we need to get negotiated. Iran's negotiators are speaking with the United States, will never retreat from the country's dignity and honor, he said, blaming the Israeli government for what he said is instability in the Middle East. But Trump said on Saturday that a deal between the U.S. and Iran had been largely negotiated after calls with Israel and other regional allies. So you can see that there's movement there. Even though it seems real small, it's movement in a direction that has to happen. Okay. So we'll see, how that goes. Now, in the meantime, Israel still, got issues here. And, they're surrounded by proxies of Iran that have been attacking them for decades, right? And so the big issue is Lebanon right now with Hezbollah. And this article came out, IDF pushes north of Lebanon security zone. Netanyahu says Israel is seizing strategic positions. So this is a tough thing because if Israel becomes too aggressive, they're going to impact the negotiations with Iran. But they also have to protect their interests. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced Tuesday that Israel is intensifying operations in Lebanon by taking strategic positions and reinforcing the security buffer zone as the IDF pushes past the lines it held as it seeks to counter the recent surge in drone attacks by Hezbollah. The announcement, which the premier made during a full security cabinet session Tuesday, came as the Israel Defense Forces confirmed that it has expanded ground operations beyond the designated security zone in parts of southern Lebanon in recent days in an effort to push Hezbollah operatives further north and reduce the threat of explosive drone attacks on northern Israeli cities. They've carried out over 100 strikes in the Bekaa Valley in eastern Lebanon, across the country's south overnight and throughout Tuesday. So Israel still is in kinetic war, right? Well, we're not. We attacked some missile sites and you call them defensive actions, but Israel is far more engaged. We're intensifying our operations in Lebanon. The IDF is operating with significant forces on the ground and taking control of strategically dominant positions. At the same time, we're carrying a major national effort to advance creative and innovative solutions against explosive drones, he added. And so, they're still under attack, basically daily. And it's easy for us, to not pay attention to that, but that's really happening. And until that stops, you're not going to have any peace. So, just be aware that that's going on. The war, is going to come to an end, I think, sooner than later. And as you can see, oil prices are already down. The stock market is going berserko. Okay, 51,000. In the Dow. It just was after we went to 50,000 just a few months ago. So, there's mixed messages, but it looks like there's going to be some sort of a deal. The Straits of Hormuz is going to be open. The oil is going to start flowing, and when that happens, Katie bar the door, because as you'll see later, every economic forecast is showing that this there's pent-up demand and in manufacturing and all kinds of areas, and once the oil starts flowing, that's just going to explode. So that's our report on the war. Nothing definitive. Could happen this weekend. We'll see. But, I think you should be encouraged that President Trump, he's not going to make a bad deal. The guy that wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, ain't going to make a bad deal no matter what you hear. All right. All right. Now, on to some other things that are very, very important. I've said to you over and over again, we are currently engaged in a real civil war. People are dying. Right? Charlie Kirk was assassinated. The two protesters in Minneapolis were killed because they were pushed to do stupid things that endangered their lives. Okay. And these protests are now just starting to ramp up. And the new Minneapolis is New Jersey. Okay. The radical left Democrats have cooked up this bullcrap lie. Oh, that the illegal immigrants are being held in ICE facilities in New Jersey in abhorrent conditions, horrible conditions, and we're going to protest their conditions. And we have a woman of one of the illegals who's being held there who's saying my husband's being held in terrible conditions. Remember, none of these people had a word to say about the actual horrific conditions in the D.C. gulags that the January 6th political prisoners were held illegally for 4 years in. They had nothing to say about that. Oh, but you should believe them when they tell you, and the mainstream leftist media tells you that they've got to inspect these ICE facilities in New Jersey. So who's there? Antifa is there, causing riots, okay, and assaulting police officers. And finally, some of them were arrested. 9 anti-ICE agitators detained during another wild night at Newark's Delaney Hall, according to the New York Post. And so here's what the story is. 9 people were arrested Thursday night during a raucous demonstration at Delaney Hall Detention Center in New Jersey, where foul-mouthed agitators again urged federal agents to shoot yourself in the head and allegedly bit, kicked, and punched officers, officials said. That's called assault. They all need to be arrested. Video shows a trio of anti-ICE demonstrators being hauled away as one obnoxious protester berates agents through a megaphone. You look like a clown. Don't even line up. Yeah, what the heck are you guys doing in there? Another yelled while others told him, take your gun and shoot yourself. Every cop, every Fed, shoot yourself in the head. The rioters are being accused of biting and kicking and punching and all that stuff. Again, this is going to be the next Minneapolis, and we need to do things differently. Okay? We need to do things differently. And so the one guy, basically lunatic Antifa person, is on camera screaming at ICE agents that he's going to kill them and their families and their children. Okay. Todd Blanche vows feds will arrest disgusting protester who threatened to kill ICE agents' family in insane video. All right. Well, yeah, good on you, Todd, because that person threatened the lives of ICE agents, and that's a federal offense. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche promised that a disgusting anti-ICE protester who threatened to kill a federal immigration agent's family during a clash outside of Newark's Delaney Hall will be caught and charged. That's a federal crime. Not only threatening the ICE officer, but think about how disgusting this individual is by threatening his wife and his children with death, Blanche told Fox News after watching disturbing clips this weekend. This is disgusting. We see his face, and I promise you, we will find him, and we find him, we will arrest him, and we will charge him. The guy said, I will kill your whole effing family. Your whole effing family is dead. Your children, your wife are all dead, the bearded protester said to the ICE agents who had protective goggles over his eyes, but you could still identify him. As he shouted at federal agents, I have your face, mother effer. You're dead, dead, the unhinged man said in a clip posted on social media. That's who we're fighting. It's a real war. Now, those of you who watch the podcast all the time will know when I talked to you about Minneapolis, I pointed out the mistakes that the feds, the DOJ, the FBI should have been there to force the Minneapolis police to protect the ICE agents. Okay? Because that was the problem. The problem was ICE is trying to arrest these illegals. In this case, they're just at a detention center, and Antifa has full reign to attack them because the New Jersey Marxist politicians, okay, from the governor to the mayor on down, want this. They're trying to create this, okay? This is, again, it's not grassroots. No one's trying to say, don't deport illegals. Americans voted to deport them, all right? So what's going on here? It's a setup. Well, we have to act. I said to you that I was upset that we did not have pro-ICE protests in Minneapolis. Now, it was really cold, like 20 degrees below zero and all that. So I get it. But now we're in New Jersey, all right? And now the weather's fine. And our friend Ralph from Canton, who's a Tea Party leader, has been for years, but he's from New York and stays in touch there, sent me a text last night. And it said, the Montclair Republicans and America First New Jersey Republicans are leading the fight for law and order. Join us at Delaney Hall this Saturday, right now. I'm recording this podcast, Saturday, May 30th. They're saying, join us this Saturday at 10 a.m. to show your support for ICE. And I wrote back to Ralph and I said, he said, he's worried about this. I said, no. We need to do this. Why? Because if counter-protesters show up against Antifa, then the police in New Jersey have to be there to keep them apart, which gives ICE a break. Okay? We need to stand up. You, we need to stand up. Do you want law and order? Isn't that the single biggest thing I've talked to you about? Why in 2024, I said we have to win to do what? Reestablish the rule of law and equal justice under the law. What are these Antifa people pushing? They're pushing that there's no law. There's chaos, that illegals should be able to come here and vote and take our money through fraud. That's what they're fighting for. What are you fighting for? What am I fighting for? We're fighting to protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. You do that by supporting law enforcement. I applaud the New Jersey patriots. I urge you, there are New Jersey patriots watching this podcast. Get out of your house and get out there and protest. I'm not talking about fighting. I'm not talking about, getting into altercations. I'm talking about be there to shout down the left, have your patriotic signs, and say, I support ICE. I want them to deport these people. That's our job. If you want your country, if you want to save this country, we're not spectators. We're participants. This is a call to action. So wherever you are, we have listeners to this podcast in all 50 states. Wherever you are, you've got to be on guard and you've got to support the enforcement of law. Because without law, we don't have a country. Got it? Okay. So pray also, those of you who are not in New Jersey, pray for the patriots who step up today and go and confront these Antifa fascist, anti-American communists. That's who they are. They want the overthrow of the United States of America. They want China to rule over all of us. And they're getting paid by China, by the way. We'll talk about that later. All right. And so what does this all lead to, right? I mean, again, I'm telling you, why this is happening and what does this all lead to? Well, it leads to the fraud that I've told you is going to be one of the biggest issues in the November election. Fraud is going to be bigger than you can even imagine right now because the fraud is bigger than we even know. So this week, Trump had his cabinet meeting and Trump and Vance exposed billions of dollars in frauds, unbelievable amounts of fraud. Now, this image, for those of you watching the podcast, was AI generated. I haven't been doing a lot of AI generated images, but I want you to know, obviously, this is an AI generated image for this story on our website. Okay. Trump administration now rooting out billions in waste. We've all been shocked and amazed to see just what the extent is of the various schemes defrauding the American taxpayer. Every federal program from supplemental nutrition assistance, SNAP, food stamps, to Medicare and Medicaid seem to be compromised. Fortunately for us taxpayers, there are now people rooting out this fraud. On Tuesday, fresh off the Memorial Day weekend, the Trump administration issued a press release counting up the results of the White House task force to eliminate fraud. It makes for quite a list. President Trump and Vice President Vance are unleashing an unrelenting, full-scale assault on the fraudsters, scammers, and corrupt operators who've looted billions from taxpayers. The White House task force to eliminate fraud is moving at unprecedented speed and ferocity to root out the waste, abuse, and criminal exploitation of government programs that have drained billions from hardworking taxpayers. You bet. And they ain't even close yet. This is a direct offensive against every fraudulent scheme preying on hardworking Americans, and the results are already staggering. Now, I have said to you, and I will stay with this, and you need to talk to people about this. It is clear to me now that from Woodrow Wilson on, every program that has been added to the federal budget to help people, children, orphans, widows, the people, who don't have, the income, undereducated, whatever the program is, the Little Sisters of the Poor, whatever. Every program was designed to rob you and I of our hard-earned dollars. Every single program. And I said when this first started breaking, and then, the $9 billion in Minneapolis just on the assisted care for seniors, I said, I believe that the entire deficit, $38 trillion deficit, is fraud. All of it is fraud. And then if we eliminated the fraud, not only would we have a balanced budget, we could cut spending. And then I argued with you last week, and I hope you sent this out to people and talked to your congressman about it over the Memorial Day weekend, that we can't just arrest the fraudsters and try to claw back the money, which is important. You got to cut it from the budget, because here's the little dirty secret. This money isn't needed. And I corrected Kash Patel when he said last week, these fraudsters are stealing money that could be going to children and people that need it. No, that's not true. Everyone who needs money is getting plenty. The money that these people are getting isn't needed by anyone and needs to be cut. You got it? That's the truth. And if you don't believe me, yeah, well, listen to Stephen Miller.
Not abiding by our laws. And the amount that has been fleeced from us is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. I believe, based on what I've seen and what I've heard, is that we could balance the federal budget if the only dollars that went out of the Treasury went to individuals who were properly, lawfully, correctly eligible to receive them. And that ultimately is going to be what we have to do as a country. In the meantime, because of the vice president's leadership, you are seeing the most muscular, robust, aggressive, dedicated, determined, and speedy effort to shut down criminal fraud that has not only ever occurred in the history of this country, but in any developed nation. So,
okay, he just said it. I believe in Stephen Miller. I think he's the smartest guy in the room. All right. He said we could balance the budget and give everyone who really needs it all they need. That's the truth. How are we going to get there? Right? How are we going to get there? And here's the other truth, the other dirty little secret. Okay. What's staggering is that the previous administration, as well as state and local officials, let this get to this point in time. That the list of busts described in the press release is lengthy, and I'm going to go over some of those. But the bottom line is they've allowed this to happen, not just Democrats, Republicans. It's staggering belief that there wasn't some indication of how bad things were before now. And in all candor, we have to look at both President Trump's first term and all the red states that are part of this. This is disgusting. Here's a rundown. February 25th, the Trump administration halted nearly $260 million in Medicaid payments to Minnesota. April 3rd, the federal prosecutor charged more than a dozen individuals with $50 million in hospice fraud schemes. April 7th, the Department of Justice secured a guilty plea from a California fraudster accused of submitting $270 million of false reimbursement claims. April 8th, the task force uncovered $6.3 billion in suspected fraudulent government contracts and immediately launched a sweeping investigation. April 5th, you see this going? I'm going the 3rd, the 7th, the 8th, the 15th, 24th. This is happening like every day, every week. The Trump administration suspended 447 hospices and 23 home health care agencies in Los Angeles with an estimated fraud of $600 million. The Small Business Administration, which I'm going to play you a clip about that, is identifying billions in fraud. The Trump administration on May 13th deferred $1.3 billion in federal Medicaid reimbursements to California. On May 13th, the Trump administration blocked $60 million in fraudulent student loan applications. It's just the first month since deploying enhanced screening for people who are actually eligible for student loans. It's everywhere in every program, and it's trillions of dollars. And listen to this video from the SBA administrator. Wow.
Particularly hurt by the fraud because they're some of our biggest taxpayers in the country, and they show up every day. They work hard to provide for their employees, to build their businesses. They're doing it the honest way, and they see fraudsters taking from the American people. It's taxpayer money. And so you think about at the SBA, we found $200 billion in fraudulent PPP loans that the Biden administration tried to hide and forgive and sweep under the rug. We've turned the first $22 billion of that over to Treasury for collections and to DOJ for prosecution. Our Inspector General is already announcing that people are going to jail. There are jail sentences now being served. We've announced that 140,000 people have been barred from ever getting SBA loans again, defrauding the government for about $9 billion. So we are going to continue our work under the great leadership of Vice President Vance and appreciate the partnership because it's really accelerated our ability to get the job done. But then just back to small businesses, we have record business.
Okay, $200 billion gone in a year. What has it been since Obama? What has it been for 16 years? So when I tell you the $38 trillion debt is all fraud, do the math. It is. And I'm just telling you, by the time you get to November, people are going to go nuts and they're going to demand Congress reduce the federal budget. And what would that do for you and I? What would that do for our economy? What would it do for the strength of the dollar? It's all a fraud, and Republicans are just as responsible as Democrats. No doubt. All these programs, it's a cycle, right? The Dems cheat to get elected. Then they steal your hard-earned tax dollars to give to people to get their votes, who then commit fraud when they bring them in here illegally and give it to the Democrats so they can win more offices, so they can steal more of your money. Our whole government is corrupt to the core. And that's why we're in a civil war, because the left can't survive if Trump cuts off their money. And we can't survive if Trump doesn't cut off their theft, right? That's where we're at. And so it all comes down to the elections. It comes down to theft. So, what happened this week? Well, this is good news. Judge clears Trump voter citizenship check and mail-in voting crackdown, slapping down Democrats. So this is where Trump signed an executive order, okay, to basically make the voting legitimate. A federal judge on Thursday cleared the way for President Donald Trump to implement his executive order tightening mail-in voting, slapping down Democrats' arguments for now that the federal effort to police voter rolls with citizenships was illegal. Of course they said it's illegal. The law says, the federal law says you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in federal elections, but they say it would be illegal to check to see if you're a citizen before you vote. It's ludicrous. And this judge kind of says that. U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols, a Trump-appointed jurist, ruled that Democrats failed to show they have standing at present to challenge the order or have suffered any harm that would warrant a preliminary injunction. Given that the executive order does not command plaintiffs do anything and that no agency has yet acted pursuant to the order in a way that could harm plaintiffs, they have not suffered any harm at present, and so they have no standing. Nichols rejected several of the Democrats' arguments that Trump's executive order could disenfranchise millions of voters, including what's creating a state-by-state citizenship list to check voter rolls would somehow be harmful, even if they were inaccurate. So again, you're gonna check to see if you're a citizen, and that violates the person's privacy. It remains speculative whether the state citizenship list, if and when they are initially compiled, will contain inaccuracies. Even if they contain initial inaccuracies, the executive order requires the adoption of procedures that will allow individuals to access and, if necessary, update or correct their information in the list. The judge also rejected the notion that the federal government sending information to the states about voters would somehow violate voters' privacy. Plaintiffs failed to demonstrate that such action, that is, the sharing of name, age, and residence information between and among government agencies, if already known to the federal government, would cause a harm sufficient to establish an Article 3 standing. It's all BS. Why are they going through this? Because the jig is up. You wouldn't be fighting this if you weren't cheating. It's literally an admission of guilt. And you need to tell your friends who aren't, thinking this through, that when they say they don't want the federal government to confirm their people on the voter rolls are citizens, that is an admission that they're cheating. Flat out. This judge just said it, just proved it. Okay? So why do we have to do this? And you want more proof they're cheating? We always bring receipts. Yeah. Newsome signs new election codes into law at a statewide primary. Well, what are these laws that Newsome just signed? California Governor Newsom signed into law additions to the election code on Wednesday, which his office says will protect state elections against any attempt of political interference by the Trump administration and its allies ahead of the November midterm elections. The new law, Senate Bill 73, authorized by state Democrat Senator Sabrina Cervantes, authored by Senator Sabrina Cervantes and Tom Umberg, prohibits any person, including federal agents, from accessing voter rolls or election technology without a court order. It also restricts law enforcement from disrupting election workers except in public safety emergencies and makes it a crime to knowingly remove voter ballots from the custody of elected officials. Newsome signed the election legislation 5 days ahead of California's June 2nd statewide primary. The new law took effect immediately, don't you know? We have to step up, said Newsome. We have to draw the line. We have to clarify the rules of engagement. It's a warning to the folks out there that think they can do the bidding of the Trump administration. Oh, yeah, you mean implement the law? The bidding of the Trump administration. How about the implementation of our laws that you now are trying to circumvent? The White House pushed back against the allegations from Newsom's office that it would be involved in disrupting lawful election administration and sending armed law enforcement to intimidate voters or steal ballots. Spokesperson Abigail Jackson said President Trump remains committed to ensuring that all Americans have full confidence in election administration. I think this is illegal. I think they're going to end up suing about this because, again, if there's a federal election, then it's up to the government, the federal government, to ensure the count was legal. And you're going to see at the end of the podcast a video by John Soloman about what's going to happen with Tulsi Gabbard before she leaves that will address what I just said. Okay. Now while California is absolutely acting to rig the election, to prove they're cheating, this was a great ruling that many people didn't hear about. North Carolina court rules state violated law by allowing non-residents to vote in federal elections. That's just what we're talking about, right? The Republican National Committee celebrated a recent court ruling Wednesday that determined that the North Carolina State Board of Elections violated the state's constitution by allowing non-residents to vote in federal elections. The Wake County Superior Court sided with the RNC in the ruling Tuesday after the North Carolina Supreme Court ruled last year that people that have never lived in the state cannot vote in state elections. The state stopped non-residents from voting in state elections in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling, but did not change its policies when it came to federal elections. Do you see it? They're cheating. This is what the left has done. How can we rig the vote? Not how can we have an honest vote. That's what we in the Tea Party and the MAGA movement, we haven't fought for anything that gives us an unfair advantage. We're fine. Let's have a fair vote, see who wins. Because we know that most people don't think like the left. They think like us, okay? We just want a fair vote. They want to cheat, and they do cheat. And this is proof. This is, let's see, the state stopped non-residents from voting, but it didn't when it came to federal elections. This is a clear win for fair and lawful elections, RNC Chairman John Gruder said in a statement. The court upheld the North Carolina Constitution and made it clear that only North Carolina residents can vote in the state. The RNC will be fighting to ensure only eligible citizens can vote. The court ruling does not impact voters who qualify under the Federal Uniform and Overseas Absentee Voting Act, which is soldiers overseas can still vote. But non-citizens can't vote in federal elections. That's the law. Okay. So the fight continues. It will continue all the way to November. Trump is going to win that fight no matter what. Okay. Lots more coming on the election front, and the Dems are losing everywhere. That's why Newsome had to take such radical action. Okay. Now, again, the elections in November, Trump said, when the Iranians are saying, he's got to cut a deal because the gas prices are high and he can't win in November. Trump said, no. Look what happened in the elections Tuesday. I'm not worried about November. What happened? MAGA triumph. Trump ally Ken Paxton he crushed John Cornyn in bitter Texas GOP primary. This was MAGA against the rhinos, and MAGA won huge. 27-point. They crushed that rhino. And John Thune and all his buddies in the Senate are just so sad. Yeah, so sad. To hell with you. In his post-victory interview with Fox Digital, Ken Paxton thanked President Trump for his endorsement, predicted Cornyn's supporters will come around and dismiss concerns about being outspent. I'm still here winning races. He's won 3 statewide races already against this guy. Tellerico is a total Democrat fraud. Okay. We're not going to lose the Senate seat in Texas. No chance. President Donald Trump and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton were big winners in the Lone Star State's bitter Republican state nomination battle, which spanned more than a year and became the most expensive Senate primary in history. Notice the trend? Everything. The Massey thing was the most expensive primary ever, on and on. There's something really wrong with that. Our system is just broke. It's all about billions. Paxton was endorsed by Trump just 1 week ago, convincingly defeated longtime GOP Senator John Cornyn in Tuesday's runoff election for the Republican nomination. With the vast majority of votes counted early Wednesday morning, Paxton toppled Cornyn by over 27 points. Paxton now faces off against State's Rep. James Tellerico, a rising star in the Democratic Party in the general election, a race that is among a handful that may decide if Republicans hold their slim 53-47 majority in the Senate. Okay? Horse hockey. That's a joke. A rising star like Beto O'Rourke. This guy is a left-wing lunatic, and what he does is he damns the Democrats to defeat. That's what this guy does. Ken Paxton will clean this guy's clock. They won't even be competitive in Texas because nobody wants his non-binary BS. Okay? He's a left-wing lunatic, and he can't hide from it. And we're lucky to have him, okay? Because he's a gift to common sense people. So I said, the rhinos are so sad because their buddy, Cornyn is now going to be out, all right? And here's the deal. Paxton, when he was interviewed on the election day on Clay and Buck and stuff, just said, this guy has been in the Senate since Paxton was in high school, all right? And what has he done? Paxton said, I go ask every person when we're at meetings, thousands of people, I say, name one thing that John Cornyn has done for Texas or done that you wanted. They can't name a thing. He didn't do anything. He wanted Trump impeached. He wanted to have immigration reform. He wanted to have the J6ers put in prison for life. John Cornyn, Republican. He's no damn Republican. And neither is Thune and neither are the rest of them. So I put this story on our website. And this is a story by this guy. His name is Alexander Muse, who I've started posting, who's really intelligent and writes really very, very informative articles. And I sent this to you. John Thune and the Republicans are lying about the power of this woman. Fire the parliamentarian, okay? And I can't read you this whole article, but you need to go to WeThePeopleConvention.org and read this article because you need to understand the scam that the Republicans are playing on us. Okay, so let me read a little bit of it here. 3 days ago, the President of the United States publicly demanded the firing of a woman most Americans have never heard of. Donald Trump went after Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough after she ruled that the $1 billion in security funding for the White House, including provisions to protect the East Wing expansion under construction, could not be included in the GOP's $72 billion immigration enforcement reconciliation package. So this is the deal where we want to fund ICE and Border Patrol because the Democrats have kept it out of the budget. And they wanted to put $1 billion out of the $72 billion, $1 billion for the East Wing ballroom that also is going to have drone protection and all kind of hospital in the basement, all that. And this woman said, oh no, you can't put that in there because it's not, it doesn't fit the rules. McDonough concluded that the security money was insufficiently budgetary to satisfy the Byrd rule and therefore could not bypass the 60-vote filibuster threshold. Senate Republicans were forced back to the drawing board to rework the passage with the president's personal protection detail caught in a procedural crossfire. So the Secret Service aren't funded. After they had to shoot a guy, again, in Washington, who shot at them outside the White House. Their lives are at stake. They're not getting paid. Right? That's how dysfunctional our government. Senate Majority Leader John Thune, when asked whether he would replace McDonough, declined. He has stuck to that position through 3 days of mounting pressure from the White House, conservative members of his own conference, and the House Republican delegation, now openly calling for Vice President J.D. Vance to overrule her from the chair. The question is no longer hypothetical. The question is whether the Republican Senate majority intends to remain a Republican Senate majority in any practical sense, or whether it intends to keep paying an Obama-era staffer $216,591,000 a year to edit the agenda the American people elected Donald Trump to deliver. Okay? We didn't elect this woman. Consider that being asked, what's being asked of the conservative voter. You are told that 77 million Americans cast ballots for a candidate who promised to secure the border, restrain federal spending, defund Planned Parenthood, reform the welfare state, and make the 2017 tax cuts permanent. You're told the Republican Party then won the Senate, won the House, won the White House on the strength of that mandate. You are then told that one woman, handpicked by Harry Reid in February of 2012 during the Obama administration and now serving her 14th year on the job, has personally struck or forced the revision of more than 75. She struck down 75 distinct provisions of Republican legislation across both Trump terms. When Democrats are in charge, she strikes down nothing. But when Trump is president, she said 75 things can't be done. The cumulative fiscal value of what she has gutted on Medicaid alone exceeds $500 billion. She blocked the cap on state Medicaid provider taxes. She blocked the prohibition on federal funding of gender transition to minors. She blocked the REINS Act. She blocked the defund of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. She blocked the deregulation of suppressors. She blocked the expansion of school vouchers. She blocked twice the defunding of Planned Parenthood, and now she's blocked $1 billion in security for the president. How's that possible? You know that Thune doesn't have to listen to her? Do you know that they could fire her tomorrow? You don't have to listen to her at all. Go read this article. Direct ask. You have to read it to understand the scam that's being conducted on us by Senate Republicans. This woman has zero authority. And this article goes on to talk about multiple times during all kinds of other administrations where the Senate leader said, okay, that's fine. She ruled that way. We're ignoring her. We're having a vote. She has no legal standing. But they're telling you, you can't have these things. We can't pass the Save America Act to make our elections secure because of this woman. But it's not true. It's because John Thune and the Rhino Republicans, McConnell's still in the Senate, remember, and all the rest of the rhinos, they don't want to deliver what you voted for. They don't want to deliver on the Trump agenda. That's the truth. We're being scammed. A direct ask. I'm asking you, go read that article. All right. Now, I'm going to talk to you about an experience I had yesterday on data centers. Okay? Because this is another scam. And I have covered it, but I haven't done enough. And I learned yesterday that I haven't done enough, and you haven't done enough, and you haven't learned enough, and you haven't read enough, because this is one of the biggest things going for your and I future. Okay? And I told you, this is like fracking. It's deja vu all over again. This is the same people who tried to stop fracking are trying to stop data centers. It's the communist Chinese. And they've done it using the same tactics. Propaganda on social media, fake paid protests, okay? And the problem is the Tea Party isn't as strong as we used to be, and we saved fracking. We the people convention organization, you and I, Tom Zawistowski, and the Portage County Tea Party and the Ohio Tea Party, Ohio Liberty Coalition, literally saved fracking in the United States. And if we hadn't, where would we be right now? We sure wouldn't. Donald Trump wouldn't be president, and we would all be in the woke universe of the Agenda 21 or Agenda 30 or whatever. We could have had the war in Iran without fracking. But now they're doing the same thing with data centers, and I don't have the resources to fight them, but I'm still fighting them. And so I put out this email, okay, and I did a 2-minute video, and I'll link to this in the podcast, because we want to build a data center in a small township in Portage County called Shalersville. And I put out this video that said, concerned about the Shalersville data center? Don't be. Get the facts. And I give them a website, NEOhioprojectinfo.com, which the developers put out, which is a good website, but a horrible name. Okay. And so I put this out. And yesterday, the developers, a company called Geis Construction, who's has an office in Streetsboro, Ohio, in Portage County, Ohio. They are building this data center for a company called BitDeer, which is a $1 billion corporation that was founded by a Chinese national who now lives in Singapore, which is a separate country, and he's not an agent of China. And they're doing, how I know that? He's a stone cold capitalist because he's mining Bitcoin at his other facilities. So anyway, they want to do this facility. And in my video, I talk about the fact that the information on the internet is just insane. They're literally saying this is going to be a massive data center. Folks, when I went to see their one in Massillon, Ohio, it looked like the storage units you see all over your community where people can store their RV and boats and stuff like that. It doesn't even look as like the big manufacturing things we have in Ohio. Now phase 2 of this is going to be a big building, okay? But the people on the left are saying this thing is going to use millions of gallons of water. Millions of gallons of water. Well, I went to their data center. I met with them. I asked them, personally said, show me, right? I go to the data center in Massillon. There's racks of computers, right? And I'm in the computer business. I've had racks of computers. They give off a lot of heat. You have to cool them, right? And on the wall opposite where the racks of computers are is a wall that looks like the inside of my radiator in my car. And they've got coolant, water and coolant flowing through that. And so the heat comes off the server, goes through the radiator, gets cold and goes outside, and it's not even warm. This data center in Shalersville is going to use 3,000 gallons of water, like a year, not every day, because they fill up the wall of a radiator with the coolant and it just recycles. You know what the people said? The people who came to the open house, when they were shown the drawings, the expert was standing there to tell them, okay, this is what the deal is. This is how we're going to do it. This is what a closed loop system looks like. The people looked at them and said, I don't believe you, you're lying. Really? Would you ever say that to someone you don't know, that you never met? On what grounds would you say, I don't believe you're lying? Because you read something stupid on Facebook? Yeah, that's the case. That's what I learned yesterday. What I learned yesterday is that there's a big difference between when we fought fracking and what's going on now. Because your and my shared life experience since we saved fracking in 2011, okay, has been the complete destruction of our trust in anything, any institution. We don't trust companies. We don't trust the government. Why? Russia, COVID, the 2020 election, right? The phony insurrection, social media censorship. Why would you believe anyone? The problem is, if you can't believe anyone, if you can't tell the difference between fact and fiction, how can you have a conversation? How can you move ahead? This is a big challenge for you. Now, I'm going to link to the email in our podcast page that I put out with that 2-minute video and with the facts about this data center in Shalersville. Here's the bottom line. The bottom line, the communist Chinese are paying to stop us from building data centers so they can dominate us forevermore. It's a national security issue of the highest level. It's more important than fracking. We got to win this fight. You and I have to win this fight. And the problem is the brilliant tech guys who can create AI don't have a clue how to influence people and aren't even trying. And so they're conceding the entire battle space, the field of information, to the left. There's all this stuff on social media saying lies, and they're doing nothing to counter that. And they're looking at me to do it for them. And then when I say, hey, it costs money to do IP targeting and stuff, can you, like the people in the energy industry finally forked over some money so we can make the movie Frack Nation to debunk the Gasland lies that the left put out when we say fracking. That movie cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it saved fracking. I'm trying to get them to give us a little money to just inform the people of Shalersville about the truth, and they're jerking me around. It's ignorant. And then the politicians make it worse because they want to give data centers tax exemptions. There's no need. It's an insanely profitable business. They're spending trillions of dollars on these data centers. They don't need any tax exemptions. And so our idiot governor, DeWine, this week finally puts out a thing saying he's suspending the tax exemptions for data centers until further review. You know why? Because the legislator had allowed for $1.3 million in tax exemptions for data centers to incentivize them to come to Ohio, like they always say they do. And instead of a 1.3 million, they gave over $1 billion of tax exemptions, of money that we, the citizens, will have to pay because they're not. It's idiotic. This Shalersville data center, they're not asking for any tax exemptions. They're paying for everything. They're not going to poison the water. They're not going to use any water. Their power situation is the best thing you ever heard. They're actually going to help keep our prices down, not raise the cost. Okay? This is a no-brainer, and they're going to give the community money they can't get anywhere else in property taxes, big property taxes. They will double the township's budget for roads and for fire. The school system will almost have 50% more money from property taxes being paid by this data center, not you, the homeowner. You're crying to me about property taxes, and now this is coming to pay the property taxes, and you're not interested. You want to ban them. What the hell's the matter with you? Go look it up. Fairfax, Virginia has more data centers than any place in the United States. Why? The CIA, these guys have been mining data forever, right? They have so many data centers that property taxes in Fairfax have dropped through the floor because the data centers are paying for everything. For everything. But you don't want that for your community. No, you don't want that for your community. Wow. We've got a fight on our hands. Because I'm telling you that of the 300 or so people came in to this open house for the first time to get the facts about this data center, 70% of them were already against it. We can't have that. We've got to win this fight. I'm committed to winning this fight, not just in Shalersville, Ohio, but in all of Ohio and in this nation. And you got to get committed. So I'm going to be posting more things. I just put a link on the front page at WeThePeopleConvention.org that says, data centers, Chinese propaganda. Click on that to go to one of the articles I posted a while back. And then I haven't done a good enough job. I've got some great articles I'm going to work to post this weekend to get us back into the fight. So you have the information to show people that you can, it's real simple. It's real simple. The fact of the matter is we can build safe data centers if we ask the right questions and demand they do the right things, and that center can greatly benefit our communities. And that's the role of government, to bring businesses into your community that can be safe and profit the community. That's what built America. Okay? All right. Had to go off on that because it was eye-opening yesterday, and I'll have more for you as we go forward. All right, we're going to take a short break and conclude the first half of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will share some of these stories. I hope you will take action, okay? And then we're going to be back after these messages. You've been listening to the We People Convention weekly news and opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. The We the People Convention news and opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. When you're playing a video, including our podcast, you'll see this little cloud button. And if you click it, it'll actually download the video to your hard disk. And this works on our podcast page as well. If you're playing our podcast, and it's going to be loud, so I won't play it for much, but there's our podcast playing, and you can see this little, download button. Okay. The other thing you got to notice on our podcast page is that there's a link here where you can send me a message about this podcast. Hey, it was great. Hey, I didn't like it. What, something was wrong, or here's a correction, that kind of thing. You can use that link. And then these are the stories that I covered in this particular podcast. And you'll see there's links that go to the stories, to the articles that I used in reporting on that. So you can click on that. You'll also see that you can sign up for our emails and text messages, but you can also watch our podcast on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV. And these are the instructions for doing that. So this is all on our podcast page, right on the front page where the yellow button was. So if you click there, this is our podcast page. These are the instructions for watching on Roku TV or Amazon Fire. And I watch our podcast on TV. It just feels more comfortable. So you can do that. We're also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you should join Rumble. And it's TomZ at WTPC. You'll see our podcast there. So you can get us a lot of different ways, including on Apple iTunes. And then this is an audio version of our podcast. If you click here, it'll just play the audio of the podcast. It will not, show you the video. So people can, listen to that while they're jogging or, working out, working in the yard, or just relaxing and just want to listen to the audio and not watch the video. And again, this is available on phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, on your computer, any way you want. And you can share this, whatever you see. If you're on a page that you really like, and you see an article that you think, geez, I've got to share this article, with someone in my family. You can send them an email by clicking on the little envelope. You can post it on Parler or MeWe. If you click on this, you get all kinds of options, where you can put it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, which we don't support, but you can do whatever you want. So we ask that you share what you see on our We the People Convention site, and that you get more people to look at it, because that's the whole idea here, to help educate people, inform them. And then, as I said before, Link, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And in my podcast every week, which is published every Saturday. So if the new podcast usually comes out every Saturday. And in that podcast, I will ask you to do certain things that will help protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's the We the People Convention website. Come back often, use it to be informed, and share it with others. Thanks a lot. All right. We are glad you're back with us. We hope you enjoyed the first half of the podcast, and I think you'll enjoy the second half of the podcast. I hope, that rant about data centers, was informative to you. You can tell I'm pretty passionate about that. I get the whole issue of AI. That's a different thing, okay? And we've talked about AI, and the Pope just did an encyclical over Memorial Day weekend that did a good job of saying to the AI guys, listen, man, you got to protect humanity. You got to do this in a way that is safe. And it was good to see the Pope speak out. I'm no fan of this Pope, okay? But I was glad to see him speak out, and other religious leaders should speak out, okay, about the morality of AI. But I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the practical reality that AI is coming whether you like it or not. It cannot be stopped. It's too powerful. It does too much to create inefficiencies that are unimaginable through any other means, and it's going to happen. So the question is, how do you manage it? And as citizens, what do you want? You want to take advantage of every tool. You want to benefit for, when they came out with electricity, you wanted to use it to run the motors in your factory instead of manual labor or horses or whatever it was. That's what happens. So the question is, can you build them safely? The fact is, absolutely you can. But you got to have politicians in your community who are not going to hide behind some NDA, who are going to hold them accountable. And in the case of Charlottesville, it's real simple. They're going to sign a written contract that says this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And if we screw up, we have a bond, we have insurance that'll pay for the damages. Take the money and help the country. That's all I'm saying. Okay? Some of you will strongly disagree. That's fine. Write to me. info@wethepeopleconvention.org. Happy to hear it. Happy to hear it. Okay? We're here to find the truth. We're here to do what's good for America. And we're not here to be misled by the communist Chinese propaganda. Okay? All right. So speaking of communist Chinese propaganda, let's start with this. Okay, let's start with this. 6 Chinese nationals busted on remote Texas ranch in failed border crossing. What is this about? Okay. Border Patrol agents and Texas Highway Patrol troopers worked together to capture 2 groups of illegal aliens attempting to escape from authorities and secure entry in the United States. In all, a total of 19 illegal aliens were captured near Eagle Pass, Texas. We've heard that name before, including 6 Chinese nationals considered by DHS to be special interest aliens. Oh, you think? You think? In stark contrast to the thousands of daily illegal border crossings near the small Texas border town during the Biden administration, new border security policies under the Trump administration have deterred most illegal aliens from attempting to cross. Despite the stronger border security measures that ended the practice of catch and release at the border, a small number of illegal aliens continue to attempt the trek, hoping to get into the country using remote border ranches to elude detection and capture. This is where it gets interesting, okay? A group of illegal aliens apprehended in Maverick County consisted of 7 nationals from 5 different countries, including Mexico, Guatemala, India, Ecuador, and Cuba. Border Patrol agents apprehended the group on a remote ranch with the help of Texas Department of Public Safety, Highway Patrol, K-9 teams, okay? Later in the evening, Border Patrol agents captured a group of 12 illegal aliens, including 6 Chinese nationals, all dressed in camouflage. According to Texas Highway Patrol spokesman, the joint arrest by Border Patrol and Highway Patrol troopers highlighted ongoing law enforcement efforts to stop criminal activity along the southern border. The influx of Chinese nationals has dropped significantly since President Trump enacted stiff border control measures, which has seen the reduction of apprehensions from the communist country. And according to the CPB, right, the Border Patrol, in 2024, nearly 40,000 Chinese nationals were apprehended by the Border Patrol after entering the United States along the southwest border and were released in the country. Where are they? Where are these 40,000 Chinese, the Biden's commies, released into our country? Don't hear that. Why isn't there a massive search by the U.S. military to find these people. They are not here for vacation. They're not here to become U.S. citizens, right? They're not here to acclimate and become, Americans. Why are they here? Why did these 6 come? Because we're at war with China. And at least Trump understands that. And the rest of the Republicans who've let it happen forever don't care. They don't care. They just don't care. So that was interesting. So here's another story that's, upsetting to me, because those of you who've watched this podcast forever, you know that I have been talking China, 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 China for 17 years. We've been at war with China for 35, 40 years. Let's put it this way. They have been at war with us. We've pretended we're not at war with them because they bribed Biden and Hunter Biden and, Swalwell and Newsome and Pelosi. And, Mitch McConnell, who got $26 million from the father of his Chinese wife, who sold us out to China. All right? It's all China. We are at war with China. We must defeat China. And because of Trump, we are finally doing that. We are hurting them bad with Venezuela and with Iran. China's getting the crap kicked out of them by Trump, okay? But this is what was happening beforehand. NASA projects may have violated law hundreds of times with joint research with China, Congress finds. Oh, really? Oh, you just found this out? A House investigation has identified hundreds of scientific publications in which NASA-funded U.S. research appears to have conducted joint work with Chinese institutions, potential violations of federal law that has barred such collaboration for more than a decade. They were doing it for 10 frickin' years, Congress, and you didn't stop it. You didn't even frickin' look, right? The report released on Wednesday by the House Select Committee on Chinese Communist Party also found that in several instances, some of that research involved collaboration between NASA and institutions that are part of China's defense research industrial base. Oh, really? The findings have serious relevance at the current moment, the committee's chairman, John Mullick, a Republican from Michigan, said, because the United States is currently engaged in a new space race with the Chinese Communist Party. NASA's successful Artemis II mission last month demonstrated the space agency's capability to return Americans to lunar orbit with the goal of reaching the lunar surface by 2028, a year and a half from now. For the first time since the end of the Apollo missions, China is also planning its own expedition to the moon, hoping to land its own astronauts around 2030. The successful Artemis II mission made all Americans proud of the incredible work happening at NASA. We're the world leader in space research and exploration, and we want to make sure taxpayer-funded research that keeps America ahead is protected from adversaries, including China. But instead, we just gave it to China. We just gave them our stuff. That's been going on, folks, for decades, because we have corrupt people in our government who are Marxist, who support China, who hate America, okay? And the fact that you're just finding out is not good. Oh, yeah, by the way, this week, the NASA administrator talked about their plans to not only land on the moon, but to put people there permanently and create a base. And that was all based on Jeff Bezos's rockets, okay? And Jeff Bezos's rocket blew up on Thursday on the launch pad and destroyed the launch pad that cost $1 billion to make and the rocket that NASA has bet its future on. Calling Elon Musk, calling Elon Musk. Space is hard. You got to be serious. You can't give it away to your political opponents. This story you're going to love. I mean, this is just an insight into the world that Trump has to navigate and how crazy it can be. I love this story. Moscow fears U.S. could push Venezuela to sell its Soviet-era weapons to Ukraine. What? Are you kidding me? This is awesome. Russia is concerned that Venezuela could allow Kiev to tap into its vast and largely unused stockpile of Soviet-made weapons as it shifts its foreign policy focus. Sergei Shoigu, Secretary of Russia's Security Council and a former defense minister, warned on Wednesday during a meeting with a Venezuelan counterpart against any attempt to involve Latin American states in arrangements that could ultimately support Ukraine. We know about the activity of Western envoys who are trying to involve Latin American states in various schemes of arms supplies in the interest of Kiev, Shoigu said, emphasizing that Venezuela continues to operate significant quantities of Soviet and Russian-made original military equipment. Moscow and Caracas have maintained a long-standing military partnership with Russia, supporting Nicolas Maduro's regime and providing them with extensive arms supplies, equipment, and technical support for decades, while Venezuela threatened the United States, helped China with oil and all that. Now Maduro's gone. Whoops. So get this. Venezuela includes T-72B tanks, BMP-3 infantry vehicles, Mi-17 helicopters, and 152mm artillery system. They remain relevant on the Ukrainian battlefield due to a shared Soviet-era standards and persistent ammunition shortages. Caracas also operates Russian-made S-300 and M2 air defense systems, but they proved to be useless when the U.S. came in and took Maduro away. Okay? Wouldn't that be awesome to have Venezuela selling Soviet weapons to Ukraine to defeat the Soviets? You can't make this stuff up, folks. It's too precious. This is the update on Cuba. Okay, U.S. military prepared to strike Cuba at a moment's notice. When POTUS says go, we're ready. Okay, and that's true. That's what it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Roughly 65 years after the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion failed to topple the entrenched Castro regime, the potential of American boots on the ground in Cuba is being discussed in Washington as the weekend's island's communist regime staggers along under the weight of crushing American economic sanctions. Military plans have been drafted as the possible summer collapses envisioned by the Trump administration, according to Axios. To date, economic sanctions rather than bombs have been weapons of choice. The best way to describe it is accelerationism, one senior administrator said, speaking of trying to collapse the regime. But we don't want to kill out the regime just yet. There's a method to this. It's in stages. Squeezing the Cuban regime is a holding pattern that offers results as President Trump seeks to bring the war in Iran to close, and then he can focus on Cuba. Okay. Well, like I say to you guys all the time, Trump can focus on more than one thing at a time, and and anything could happen with Cuba at any moment. Don't doubt that. But it's going to happen. It's just that simple. It's going to happen. And so then in the meantime, this is an interesting story. Feds subpoena Hassan Piker, Medea Benjamin over Cuba trips. Investigation part of a broader dragnet involving as many as 40 American citizens who joined Marxist convoys to Havana. So this has been something that's been going on. I talked a couple months ago about some Democratic, congressman from Michigan went to Cuba, right, to support the Castro regime. That's a Hatch Act violation. You can't do that. You can't interfere with U.S. Foreign relations. Okay, but anyway, this is interesting. Federal officials have served subpoenas to Marxist political influencer Hassan Piker and Code Pink co-founder Susan Medea Benjamin as part of a wider investigation into whether U.S. organizations and leaders violate U.S. law and sanctions and supporting Cuba's communist regime. Piker and Benjamin are among those caught in a federal inquiry into whether activists who traveled to Cuba in March violated U.S. sanction laws through financing, coordination of delivery of goods to Cuba, including potential contacts with Cuban government personnel or entities on the island. The administration's subpoenas were sent to the pair by the Treasury Department. These are called requests for information. They seek financial, logistical, and communications information revolving around the trip. The investigation is part of a broader effort by officials of Treasury and State Department and Justice Department to curb foreign influence operations inside the United States, particularly activities tied to support for political violence, extremist movements, or acts the U.S. government classifies as terrorism. So this goes down to this guy, this billionaire from China, this Singham guy, who's put $278 million into nonprofit groups that push pro-China, pro-Cuba, anti-U.S. narratives and street protests for almost a decade since his marriage in February 2017 to Code Pink co-founder Jody Evans, who was also being investigated for her role in the March trip. Code Pink received $1.3 million from Singham after he married Evans. Yeah, what would the Tea Party do with $1.3 million? In 17 years, we haven't had anywhere near that kind of money in Ohio to fight for anything, right? But that's the deal. When I tell you it's funded by the communist Chinese, there's your proof. Okay? $278 million. What would we do with that? $250 million. Okay. This was bizarre. DOJ sues 4 leftist states over hypocritical undercover license plate policies that kneecap the feds. Yeah, they will go to any extent to not have the law enforced, to allow them to do whatever the hell they want with bringing illegals in, having them commit the fraud that we talked about in the first part of the podcast, take your job, whatever. They'll do anything. So this story, you got to have this. Here's some typical hypocritical blue state behavior for you. 4 states refuse to issue undercover license plates to federal law enforcement. Why? Because their administrations are full of bitter leftists who kneecap efforts by the Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to deal with the illegal immigration problem. Yeah, we voted to get these people out. They're now refusing to let ICE agents have fake plates on their cars because what did the left do? They take pictures of the license plates and then they dox them, right? Yeah. Make it even worse, they do issue the plates for state and local law enforcement. Now the Justice Department is suing the 4 defiant states, and it's an extreme left bunch: Maine, Massachusetts, Oregon, and Washington. The DO says that what they're doing is unconstitutional, denying undercover license plates to DHS components, including ICE, while issuing them to their own state agencies. These governors are pursuing discriminatory and obstructionist policies against federal law enforcement. These actions undermine federal immigration enforcement, allow dangerous criminals to escape justice, and terrorize American communities. DOJ says the lawsuits came after Maine, Massachusetts, and Oregon and Washington each refused to rescind the policies following being notified of this policy. Right? Again, if you are not intentionally breaking immigration law by bringing illegals here to commit fraud, both on our government welfare programs and in voting, then why would you do that? Why wouldn't you be helping ICE? It's an admission of guilt. You got to put those two things together. But how petty? How far will they go? What won't the leftists do to undermine the rule of law in our nation? What won't they do? The answer is there's nothing they won't do, including kill you and me. There's nothing they won't do, as we'll see, coming up. Okay. This is good news about this new committee, okay, that is going on with this House committee with Representative Gill. And basically what they're doing, immigration nonprofits are fair game for investigations, says new House task force leader Brandon Gill. He's taken particular interest in examining organizations and politicians who use their charitable status for political benefit, right? Well, that was the whole issue with I'm sorry, I lost my space here. Okay, so that was the whole issue with the Southern Poverty Law Center, right? Where it's a nonprofit, don't you know? They're just doing good, but they were a political actor, and they were actually paying people to falsely pretend to be Nazis and white nationalists and create a narrative that was untrue. So Gill says the nonprofits that abuse the government for political gain may soon find themselves in the investigative process of a newly formed government House task force, says Texas GOP Representative Brandon Gill, who will lead the panel under House oversight. The 6-month task force on defending constitutional rights and exposing institutional abuse will examine illegal DEI policies, misuse of immigration and social welfare programs that defraud taxpayers, and efforts by foreign actors and dark money groups to suppress free speech. You do not have the right to run an organization that takes tax dollars, that engages in illegal activity or engages in domestic unrest or engages oftentimes in political activity, whether it's nonprofits or other sorts of entities that are taking government money. The freshman lawmaker was appointed to be the chairmanship by James Comer. Gill argues that Congress has a responsibility to examine the issue of abuse and fraud and withhold funds from groups found to be in violation. We have to ask ourselves, now get this, this is a quote from him, now get this. We have to ask ourselves as elected representatives if it makes sense to take our hard-earned tax dollars, tax money, and put it in the pockets of NGOs or other entities that are working against you and against America's interests. And the answer is obviously no, said Gill, who also said his task force will focus on defending constitutional rights against institutional-based abuses. So that is a big part of going after fraud and going after waste and abuse as well. Folks, what have we been saying? What has the Tea Party been saying? What have I been saying to you for 17 years? The bottom line is the left can't exist in our nation if we just take our money away from them. They funded themselves from our tax dollars. And now Brandon Gill has woken up to the reality of that. Like, oh, wow, this is something we should do. No kidding. Should have done it years ago. But, this is the real story. I told you, fraud is going to be a big story in the November election. The side story is going to be the fact that everyone we're voting for on the ballot, not everyone, most of the people who are voting on the ballot are responsible for letting it happen. And how are they going to be held accountable? That's going to be the other side of the coin, the other side of the question. Okay, let me move on here to some other stories. Let's see. Okay, so let's go on to Minneapolis police chief resigns after probe into personal conduct. So this is kind of a cheap shot, okay? But I want to cover it because at the end of this article, there's something that just blew my mind. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara on Tuesday resigned his post after an investigation found he maintained sexual relationships with public employees, meaning not one, but many. Mayor Jacob Frey, who we saw on display with the ICE protests, confirmed his resignation in a press conference, saying, when you serve as chief of Minneapolis Police Department, trust is not a secondary job. It is a job. When trust is broken, it becomes extremely difficult to continue leading effectively. Okay? O'Hara held the position since 2022. His tenure coincided with considerable civil unrest in the city, especially amid President Trump's immigration crackdown in the area. Minneapolis is also facing large-scale investigations into misuse of public funds and federal fraud. Get this. Minneapolis, this guy's a police chief, okay? Minneapolis currently boasts one of the highest crime rates in the nation. Local authorities have reported nearly 2,400 motor vehicle thefts in 2026. In 5 months, 2,400 vehicle thefts. Holy cow. What was this guy doing? Police chief? Yeah, we know what he was doing with the employees. And while he was doing that to them, he was also doing that to his community, I guess. Right? That just shows you how the left just puts these incompetent people in these positions. It's just crazy. This story, you talk about incompetent people, right? Mamdani, New York Mayor Commie Mamdani threatens landlords with property takeover. Well, of course, this is what they do, right? Because that's what communists do. They take your property. New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani has launched an ambitious housing plan to build 200,000 new units in New York City over 10 years. But he also to preserve another 200,000 units through subsidies or possibly a forced takeover. In extreme cases of landlord neglect, the city will step in to force a sale. When necessary, he said, we will take aggressive legal action to remove negligent owners and property managers. The mayor said such landowners would be replaced by, get this, responsible stewards, which could include community land trusts, nonprofits, or the building's tenants. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Show me how well that works out. Yeah. Show me how bad renting is going to get in New York, how high prices are going to get, how broke they're going to go. Because community land trusts and the tenants will know how to run a building better than a businessman. Because, those businessmen are evil. Keep going, Mamdani. Keep going. You're helping us, man. You're helping us. This story is just nothing short of bizarre. Just bizarre. FBI arrests former CIA official over $40 million worth of gold bars stashed at Virginia home. I said that slowly because you got to picture this. The FBI arrested former CIA official last week after investigators discovered hundreds of gold bars hidden at his home in Virginia, according to court documents. The official, identified as David Rush, was charged with criminal theft of public money in a complaint filed last week in the Eastern District of Virginia. He has also been accused of lying to employers about his background for nearly 2 decades. The CIA and FBI confirmed Rush's arrest in a joint statement. After a CIA internal investigation identified potential violations of the law, CIA Director John Ratcliffe referred the information to the FBI for a law enforcement investigation. The FBI, working closely with our partners at the CIA, and DOJ, continued to investigate the matter. The arrest comes after the FBI raided Rush's home in Virginia on May 18th, where law enforcement officers found 300 gold bars, which are estimated to be worth more than $40 million in his house. The court papers do not indicate why Rush kept so much gold, but it comes after he requested and received a significant quantity of foreign currency and tens of $millions in gold bars for work-related expenses at the CIA. CIA employee says, I need you to give me some gold bars for my work-related expenses? And no one stopped him for 10 years? Now, at least, if it says, NBC News said most, if not all, of the funds, including the foreign currency and gold, were recovered. Well, thank goodness. But this just shows you how incompetent and dysfunctional the CIA is. The DOJ, the FBI. It's broke as a joke. And so those of us who lose patience with Trump and Patel and Blanche and everybody doing their job, we just grossly underestimate how difficult a job they have. That article, I think, puts it in perspective. All right. I'm going to go through some quick economic news here. I'm not going to, spend too much time on any of it, but it is important because you got to know this podcast is about your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. The economy affects you. You need to understand what's happening and why it's happening. Pricey gas pushes inflation to 3.8%, the highest in 3 years. So Trump was getting inflation down. Okay, now remember, inflation was 9% under Biden. Okay, and on average was higher than this. But for Trump, this is high. U.S. inflation increased at its fastest pace in 3 years in April, driven by higher energy prices amid the war with Iran, and cementing economists' views that the Federal Reserve could hold interest rates unchanged well into next year. So this is basically blowing the idea of another Fed rate cut, even with the new Fed chairman. The personal consumption expenditure price index jumped 3.8% in the 12 months through April, the largest rise since May of 2023. The conflict has disrupted shipping and the Straits of Hormuz, boosting energy prices as well as straining global supply chains and causing shortages of a wide range of products, including fertilizer, which we talked about last week, aluminum, and consumer products. So that's why the inflation is up. we think once you get, the war settled, you get this deal that he might do this weekend, that's going to go down. Okay. We think everything's in place for inflation to go down, but the gas thing is obviously a cost, and that our costs are up, right? You see it at the pump. This is not good news. Average 30-year mortgage rate climbs to 9-month high. The weekly average rate on 30-year fixed rate mortgages continued climb for the most recent week, hitting its highest level in 9 months. For the week ending May 27th, the rate was 6.53%, up from 6.51. The last time rates exceeded this level for the week was August 25. Pending home sales increased 3 months in a row, indicating there's latent demand and homebuyers are ready to jump back if the mortgage rates decline. I think if the war gets settled, gas comes down, I think you'll see that happen. I think it will decline. What is good news, since that was bad news, good news is U.S. Treasury. I went to the wrong place here. Let me go back. I want to go to the good news is. The good news is that U.S. trade deficits have gone down again, and so the whole thing about the tariffs was we want to decrease our dependency on foreign nations. We want to build stuff here, right? So that's what they're doing. U.S. states goods trade deficit narrowed more than expected in April, driven by a surge in exports that more than offset a sharp rise in capital goods imports. The Commerce Department reported Friday that goods trade deficit fell to $82.4 billion in April from $85.3 billion in March, below the $86.5 billion economists had forecast. Exports of goods rose 4% for the month to $219 billion, outpacing the 1.9% rise in imports to $302 billion. So we're starting to get to the point where our imports and exports are equal, and that's where you want to be. Capital goods imports rose by 5.6% in April, and we're up 40% from a year earlier. That's an important figure. An increase so large and so concentrated in business equipment that it points toward a broad corporate investment cycle. It also highlights that Americans remain significantly dependent on technology imports after several decades of neglectful trade policies that offshored productive capacity. See, the tariffs are working. Capital goods exports also rose sharply, climbing 7.5% for the month and 20.6% for the year earlier. That suggests strong foreign demand for U.S.-made capital goods, even as American businesses continue importing equipment for domestic investment. Basically, the tariffs are helping us by onshoring manufacturing and creating a balance in our trade. And again, I said, we're with China. This is helping us defeat China. Okay, that's the bottom line. Then I had the story about the Trump accounts, right? U.S. Treasury launches Trump accounts app nationwide. So I've talked to you about the Trump accounts. These are the accounts where every child born, okay, and I'll get the dates for you in a second, gets $1,000 in an account that's tied. It's a fund that's tied to the stock market until they're 18 years old to help get young people to understand capitalism and to benefit from capitalism, to correct what we've done wrong over all these years, where only the rich and powerful had stocks, okay, and most people did not. So this is the story on this. The Promise Trump Accounts app is now available nationwide, delivering on key policy initiative that aims to deliver millions of investment accounts for children. The simple premise of the innovation seeks to encourage long-term investing from an early age by America's children through government-backed starter accounts, as flagged last year by Breitbart News. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in a video posted on social media platform X on Thursday, the innovation is available for all Americans. This groundbreaking new app will make it easy for millions of Americans to sign up, contribute, and watch their investments grow in value. The launch marks an important milestone towards expanding financial access and delivering parallel prosperity for Main Street like Wall Street has had for all Americans. Nearly 6 million children have already signed up for Trump accounts. 6 million children. We need more. Your grandchildren, your children, if you're a young person. U.S. Department of Treasury elaborated, indicating the next phase of the Trump accounts program will include accounts activation beginning for millions of American families ahead of the official launch on July 4th this year. As of today, parents and legal guardians who have already registered their kids for Trump accounts by submitting IRS Form 4547 will begin receiving emails with instructions to complete the account setup process. Activation emails for these families will be sent out in phases between now and July 4th. Okay? And so the Trump accounts basically are for anyone. Let's see, you get $1,000 for every American child born between January 1st of 2025 and December 31st of 2028. So if you know someone that had a baby in that period from January 1, 2025 to December 31st, 2028, so that's coming in the next few years, you get $1,000. Just go to the website and sign up and get it. And then you can contribute as a grandparent, as a parent, to it up to $5,000 in the child's name every year. And it just compounds. The account is fully in your child's name and you are sole custodian until they're 18 years old. Why wouldn't you do this? Why wouldn't you do this? It's a no-brainer. And yes, I know people say, well, Tom, here we are. We have this deficit and you're giving $1,000 to 6 million kids, $6 billion. Okay. Yeah. But it's money going to us instead of to people who are stealing it, right? If you cut the fraud, we can do this kind of stuff and more. It's about time we help the small people, the families, because it's years before people can afford to put money away for their children because it's too expensive to raise the children. This is a jump start. And maybe, just maybe, when they're in their 20s, they won't have to go on welfare because this $1,000 will compound over 18 years and they can get an education or start a business or buy a house. It's an investment in our future. I'm all for it. So that's great. I posted this in our video section because, again, it just doesn't get enough. And now it's becoming passe. It's like moon landings, moon launches did. After we got to the moon, then people wouldn't even watch when we went to the moon the second, third, fourth time. And this is Trump's cabinet meeting on May 27th. Never before in the history of the world has the common man and woman had the kind of access that Trump gives you by televising these cabinet meetings where every cabinet member goes around and tells you exactly what the hell they're doing and why. That's amazing. You should at least take the time to watch it because you'll find out a lot of things that'll blow your mind. Like the SBA person I played the little clip of where they found $220 billion in stolen PPP fraud, right? It's in our WeThePeopleConvention.org in the podcast, in the video section. Click on videos, there'll be. Watch it. It's amazing. Amazing. Here's something else that was amazing, but so good to see. Trump celebrates after UN Climate Committee moves away from its most extreme global warming scenarios. Really? Oh, yeah? Okay. President Donald Trump on last Saturday, blasted Democratic climate policies after scientists moved away from one of the most extreme global warming scenarios previously used in United Nations-backed climate modeling. Good riddance, Trump said, after 15 years of Democrats, he said, Democrats, not Democrats, promising the climate change is going to destroy the planet. The United States' top climate committee just admitted that its own projections were wrong. Trump wrote on Truth Social. Trump accused Democrats of using climate fears for justify energy policies and government spending. For far too long, climate activism has been used by Democrats to scare Americans, push horrible energy policies, and fund billions into their bogus research programs, he continued. Unlike the Democrats who use climate alarmism nonsense to push their Green New scam, my administration will always be based on truth, science, and fact. Can you say data centers? Trump's comments came after climate scientists moved away from using the most extreme emission scenario developed under the United Nations backed Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The IPCC's worst-case scenario, which included significant global temperature increases and sea level rises, included global crop failures and even potential extinction events on the scale of the dinosaurs. That's the crap they've been selling to you and your kids for the last 20 years. With Al Gore and Greta Thunberg as their spokespeople. The scenario known as RCP 8.5 projected severe global warming outcomes under extremely high emissions assumptions, none of which came true. And he said, Trump went to Europe and said, you people are just stupid. According to GB News, the scenario is being phased out after research concluded it no longer reflects the most plausible trajectory based on renewable energy growth, emissions trends, and climate policies. Researchers writing in the Journal of Geoscientific Model Development said future climate scenarios should continue to cover a wide range of outcomes from severe warming to lower emission futures. For the 21st century, this range will be smaller than assessed before on the high end of the range. Trump's posts following remarks he made last September in the UN General Assembly in New York, where he called the climate change a con job. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion, said Trump at the time. All these predictions made by the United Nations and many others offered for bad reasons were wrong. They were made by stupid people that have cost their countries fortunes and given those same countries no chance for success. I love it when the truth dies in darkness, meaning the climate lies die in darkness, right? The Washington Post. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to see. You guys, you knew how bad it was. You never thought we'd see it happen this quick, that they would surrender. They would admit they're full of crap, right? That's what's beautiful about this time. We are winning big things. The death of the climate scam is a huge win. The problem is too many of your children and grandchildren still believe the nonsense, and you got to keep talking to them about it. Maybe share that story. It'll be linked in our podcast page. This is awesome, man. Florida governor calls for special session to eliminate property taxes for homeowners. I mean, what doesn't Ron DeSantis do? Seriously, how is he not the best governor I've ever heard of? Florida is just amazing. And what's he about? He's about common sense. Listen to what he says. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on May 27th called for a special legislative session to pass his plan to exempt homeowners from paying property taxes on their permanent residence. The Republican governor revealed his plan to sign a proclamation that will require state lawmakers to convene in Tallahassee and discuss Save Our Homes proposal starting on June 1st. Taxing something that you own repeatedly, which is a property tax, is the worst way to do taxation, DeSantis said. He hopes that eliminating taxes for Florida homesteads could be a bipartisan effort. You pay all these taxes to acquire that property. Then year after year, you're just having to write a check for the privilege of being able to maintain ownership in something that's supposedly yours. The proposal contemplates phasing in the exemption and creating a state trust fund to compensate local governments for lost revenue. Because the measure would involve a change to Florida's constitution, if it passes the state Senate and state House, which are both Republican controlled, it will need to be approved by voters in November. Property tax revenue, now get this, property tax revenue collected by local governors in the Sunshine State has nearly doubled in 7 years. Doubled. To 60 billion from 32 billion, according to the governor's office. DeSantis wants to make local governments use property taxes only for core public needs, such as public safety, education, infrastructure, and natural resources. The proposal will require new Florida residents to maintain residency for up to 5 years before they can receive the homestead exemption. But here's the point. He recognized, what are these local governments doing when they went from 32 billion to 60 billion in income? You got to give the people some of the money back, right? Why isn't that happening in Ohio? Why isn't that happening in your state? DeSantis is right. And I hope this is the trend. And we're fighting for it here in Ohio. You got to fight for this in your state. We need to abolish property taxes in our lifetime. It's a liberty issue. Do you own your home or don't you? You don't want to be renting it from the government. That's socialism. That's communism. That's Mamdani madness, right? Kudos. You guys in Florida, make sure you're heaping praise on DeSantis. And you people elsewhere, make sure you're heaping demands on your state legislatures and governors. This has to happen. It only makes sense. And then I promised you earlier that there's going to be a lot happening on elections. That, this whole thing that they're building the case, and it's this conspiracy case in Georgia, Geneva, in Florida, and what's going on. They're interviewing hundreds of witnesses. They're doing hundreds of depositions. And so John Soloman dropped this video. I posted it on X. I'm going to play it here. It'll be linked in our podcast page. Listen to what he has to say about what's coming real soon.
Tulsi's going to go out in a blaze of glory in her final month, because she will be able to release in succession some extraordinary evidence of foreign interference in our election in 2020 and since. The intelligence community has known a lot more about active measures from China and Iran and other enemies that it did not make public. Instead, it gave intelligence community gave the Americans a false sugar pill, saying that the 2020 election was the most secure in history. She will systematically destroy that narrative. Now, I think she'll be briefing senators soon on states whose voter databases were penetrated by China. That could move the needle on some of these senators voting for the Save America Act. I think there's a tranche of documents that Tulsi Gabbard needs from OMB. If you listen in Russell, pay attention to this. This is important. There is concern that Ukraine was involved in a 2024 scheme to take a large federal grant that was given to Ukraine and launder it back to the Biden 2024 campaign. We're not talking about Hunter Biden grift in 2014. We're talking contemporaneously in 2024. The evidence of whether that occurred or not sits in OMB's files, because OMB is currently running the U.S. Agency for International Development. If she can get those documents, she could make a criminal referral to the FBI. Thus far, she doesn't have those documents. So I hope Russ Vought jumps into action pretty quickly. The third thing, so those are the foreign interference things. You could have cheating, a U.S. taxpayer money going to Joe Biden's campaign. That's what the intercepts that we talked about a month ago showed. The proof of that, and I've even talked to some U.S. intelligence community sources who are familiar with what they believe happened here. The proof of that is sitting in USAID records currently in Russ Vought's possession. The second part of this is what the FBI is doing. Sometimes you don't get a mobster for being a mobster. You get them on taxes, or you get them on some other violation. The election workers down at the state levels who changed the rules of election from what their legislatures mandated in Wisconsin, in Georgia, in Arizona can be criminally prosecuted if they did so knowfully and willing, meaning that the legislature said you should do X, but you ran the election this way because that's what you wanted to do. That is what the FBI is beginning to interview people day in and day out doing. And if they build enough evidence with these workers that instructions were given contrary to what the legislator's intent was, you will have a full-blown cheating scandal. The cheating will be they didn't conduct the election the way the law said. That's a little different than what people thought. It's not machines flipping votes, but it's still a form of cheating. It's still depriving the American public of a fair election. Yep. That's where the FBI is going. And yesterday, there was a big win in North Carolina. It isn't getting the attention it deserves. North Carolina bureaucrats in the election regime wanted to start registering people who had never set foot in North Carolina and didn't live in California. In North Carolina. They wanted to give them voter registration status even though they don't live in the state. A judge said that is ludicrous. But those are some of those bureaucratic deep state power moves that are cheating elections. A judge beat that back. Things like that went on in 2020, and that's what Kash Patel's pursuing.
Okay. How's that? That's a mouthful, man. That's investigating election fraud. That's Chinese had voter rolls, all that stuff, right? That's amazing. Go, Tulsi, go. We're sorry she's having to take care of her husband, but we're glad she's going to go out in a bang, because that's what you and I need to see. The world needs to understand the 2020 election was stolen. American history needs to reflect that. The people who did that need to be in prison. Okay? That's what we're working towards. And you can see they're working towards it. They are working towards it. It's not happening as fast as we'd like, but they are working towards it. Okay? All right. We're going to wrap up our podcast for this week. I did get all the banners out that have been ordered. We had a few that we were behind on, but we got caught up this week. If you want one of these Happy Birthday America 250th banners, you can go to wethepeopleconvention.org and order them right there on the front page. There's a button to click, and we can turn them around really quickly. We have a great printer that prints them and ships them right away. So, please go and order your banner if you want one, because 4th of July is coming up, and you're starting to see more advertisements, more companies putting the 250 logo in. I encourage that, want to see that. Let's celebrate the 250 years, what we, the people, have achieved and accomplished. It's so important. All right. If you, you need to tell people about this podcast, you need to share it. You need to sign up to get our emails and our text messages at wethepeopleconvention.org. You need to write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org, info@wethepeopleconvention.org, and say, hey, I don't agree with you on data centers. I don't agree with you about, the property taxes. Or, I do agree with you. You need to say, hey, Tom, here's a story that's real important that you didn't cover. Here's something you missed, okay? Because this is your podcast. I present it, but I get stories all the time from you guys because I can't see everything. But because of that, this is the blessing we have. We've been around for 17 years. We have 100,000 members around the country. And so we have eyes and ears everywhere. And so I think I have a better feel because of you for what the American people think and what's really going on. Though I got my eyes open a little bit at the data center visit in Shalersville yesterday, but it's because you guys share this information and keep me, on track with things that you could miss. And everybody who writes to me about this podcast, and please do, just write and say hi. Just tell me you're out there. Okay. info@wethepeopleconvention.org. People say, man, every time, and there's stories in here that I didn't hear anywhere else that are important. The key here is to do stories that affect your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. That's what we try to do. Okay. Now, speaking of that, I don't know what the deal is, but I know it's true because enough of you said, not a lot of people, but some of you have said to me the last several podcasts have had this sound in it that's like a dog whistle. I can't hear it. Nan can't hear it. I can't find it. So I did some things this week to try to change the audio and hopefully didn't screw it all up. But for those of you who were hearing this sound, please write to me and tell me whether this week was better or not. I'm still trying to investigate. I'm not happy with the audio hookup I've got, but even using AI, I haven't been able to figure out anything better. But I did make some changes that I think will help. So let me know about that. Okay? All right. We'll end on that note. It looks like spring has finally sprung, at least in Northeast Ohio. We are going to have 4 of the nicest days in a row we've had all spring. The temperatures in the 60s and 70s, blue skies, low humidity. We're just so excited. Can get the lawn work done, can enjoy being outside, go to a ball game or whatever. So enjoy the weather. I hope the tornadoes are done. The big storms are finally subsiding. I hope you're well. I hope health-wise you're doing okay. Nan and I are doing as well as we can. We're doing pretty doggone good compared to where we've been. So we hope you're okay. And just, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take action to protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity in our great nation. Okay? We'll be back again next week. You've been listening to the We the People Convention weekly news and opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. May God bless you and continue to bless our great nation. See you next week.
Can you see? Yes, we are the brave. We'll fight to rename the name of the brave. We are the US of A. For those unaware, that flag is still there. It's our future to save this land of the brave, the US of A. Oh, say just that star-spangled banner, yeah, wave for the land of the free, and the home of the
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.